Good evening, everyone. My name is Basha. I'm one of the advisors here at US-UK Fulbright Commission. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to this webinar today. Tonight, we'll be talking about studying for a postgraduate degree in the US, the reasons why you might want to do that, how to think about universities and how to choose them, and that process behind it. And we'll also be talking about funding US education and the application process as well. You will be able to ask questions whilst I go along or at the end of the webinar. You could pop them in the Q&A box. And just so you're aware, this webinar will be recorded and will be available to you at the end of this week. Okay, so first of all, what is Education USA? So Education USA is an advisory service that is part of the Education USA network, which is a US Department of State network of over 400 international student advising centers throughout the world. And we help international students with how to study in the USA and figure out how to go about that process. So we're based at Education USA, and our center is the US-UK Fulbright Commission in London. And the Commission and Education USA are paired up to help people explore education in the US, both at postgraduate and undergraduate level. And also at the graduate level, we provide awards to graduate students to go to the US to study. And our aim as Education USA advisors is to offer free and unbiased advice to help UK students study in the US. So if your dream is to study in the USA, we are here to help you. Okay, so why study in the USA? Well, there are many different reasons, but some of the top ones are that there are a wide range of choices of universities. So there are over 1,700 universities that offer postgraduate degrees in the US. That's compared to about 120 here in the UK. So there's a lot of variety in institutions, and also there's a lot of variety amongst different academic departments at US universities as well. Going to the US gives you an opportunity to internationalize your CV. So employers cite cross-cultural experience as a very attractive quality when they hire their employees. And it's helpful to have a diverse experience and to demonstrate independence that's necessary to study abroad. It also gives you an opportunity for global networking. So you get to have an opportunity to create global networks, not only with American faculty and institutions, but also with the diverse colleagues which make up many US universities, as well as other students that are already there. You also have an opportunity for practical experience. So there are many hands-on opportunities for research, internships, and teaching opportunities at the postgraduate level in the US. You also get to expand your horizons. So living and studying in another country expands your worldwide view. And it also may expand the opportunities available to you in the future. So as a student, after your postgraduate studies, you're able to work for an additional year after you graduate in the USA as part of your student visa. And also during your studies there, you could work up to 20 hours on campus and during term time, and up to 40 hours off campus outside of term time as well. And the last reason to study in the US is actually funding opportunities. Now, this may surprise some of you, but this is a final top reason to study in the US. There are a lot of funding schemes and scholarships that are available on the postgraduate level in the US, and I will talk about these a bit later on. Okay, so what are the differences between the US and UK in the postgraduate studies? So one of the main differences is actually the duration of the program. So typically in the US, programs are longer. There's a 2-year master's, although there are some 1-year programs out there, but they're very limited. And a PhD is between 4 to 6 years long. Now, a PhD might be less or more also depending on the program or the department that you're part of. There's an integrated master's in the PhD program in the first year or the first 2 years of the coursework in the US. However, those that have a master's can use this time to sharpen their skills or gain more experience teaching or do more research as an assistant, for example. Now, typically a master's is a mandatory component of the degree. So if you don't have a master's, you would take that during the first 2 years of your PhD program. In the US, there's no pure research degrees. So the programs include coursework, even on the postgraduate level in the US. Whereas in the UK, you don't really have to go to class or have coursework per se. There are also no set fees or standard application deadlines. So these will vary greatly by universities and also by the department in regards to the fees that you will pay and the deadlines that you will have for the application. And in the US, the postgraduate programs are organized by the department, so not by the supervisors. You actually do not need to know your supervisor beforehand, especially since some programs are more interdisciplinary, and that means that you may have multiple supervisors or even a supervising committee. And you do not have to have an in-depth research proposal to apply to the US. They will kind of expect you to figure this out as you go through the program. And one more difference is that law and medicine are strictly studied at the postgraduate level in the US. So you will not find any law or medicine in the undergraduate level in the US, like here in the UK. Okay, so what is the timeline for applying for a postgraduate study in the US? So we recommend that you begin to research programs about 12 to 18 months before enrollment. You will then finalize a selection of between 3 to 6 universities or programs to where you will be applying to, and that will be around 10 to 12 months before you plan to enroll. And around the same time, we recommend that you take any required admissions exam and begin your applications to the universities as well. Now, about 8 to 10 months before you enroll, you will put together an application and you will submit it according to the deadlines. Now, keep in mind that different programs and even different universities will have different deadlines for their applications for the postgraduate program. Now, we recommend that around 4 to 7 months beforehand, so in the spring before you enroll, you will actually hear back from the universities you apply to with their admissions decision. And based off of where you were accepted, you should notify universities of your decision. 1 to 3 months before the enrollment, we recommend that you apply for your visa. Now, I wouldn't leave it to 1 month before the enrollment. I'd probably start more like 3 months before an enrollment, as the embassy does get quite busy during the summer. There are additional resources on our website to help with your pre-departure advice, such as travel advice, what the living arrangements look like in the US, what the campus life looks like as well. And typically you will start around mid-August to early September, which is slightly earlier than here in the UK, where you would probably start around mid-September. Okay, so how do you go about choosing a program? So there are over 1,700 institutions, as I mentioned, that offer postgraduate programs in the US. So there are a lot of options, and each institution and even each department at the same university will be different. So how do you go about narrowing down where you actually want to apply? So the term that we like to focus on a lot at the Fulbright Commission is this idea of fit. And what this means is that we want students to find a program that is really going to be the best fit for them and their personality and their academic interests. So the first step in choosing process is actually to locate different factors that are important to you and make a list of what will really matter to you at the postgraduate level or what you want out of it. So we recommend that you don't just look at universities that you have heard of straight away, or ones that you might have seen mentioned in movies or television programs, or even ones that have the highest rankings, as you might actually miss out on some great universities and great programs. Okay, so when it comes to fit, some of the factors you want to consider are the types of institutions that are available in the US. So do you want to go to a public university or a private one? Some private universities in the US have a lot of research that happens at the postgraduate level. Maybe you want to go to a large university as opposed to a small one. Private universities tend to be smaller than public ones as well. Think about the program type you're looking at the postgraduate level. This is arguably more important than the institution itself. So you might want to consider your career goals or qualifications that you might be interested in, or are there any concentrations that you want to do at the postgraduate level? Do you want to be in a program with funded internship opportunities? Or do you want to be in a program where you could get grant writing experience? Have a look at the academic department. So choosing the right department is almost as important as choosing the right university at the postgraduate level. So it will influence so much of your experience in the US. As I mentioned before, at the postgraduate level, academic departments generally handles admission process. They also design course structure for students, and they also monitor a student's program through progression throughout the program. So it's essential to research the department at each university to find the right academic home for you. Now, you might find that you're looking at two different departments at the same university, but they might vary completely from each other. So it's important to do that research and find out if the department is the right fit for you. Departments can vary drastically. So they could have different areas of faculty expertise. They can have different elective courses and concentrations. They might be very tightly focused, or they might be more interdisciplinary, which means you might be able to take classes from different disciplines. They will vary by size and the atmosphere as well. And they will also vary by opportunities for teaching, for research, for conference attendance, and things like internships as well. Another factor to consider is the location. So the US is a massive country that spans across 6 different geographic zones. You might want to look at or think about if you want to be in an urban or rural setting. What climate do you like? Do you want hot summers and cold winters? Then maybe East Coast might be the place for you. Or are you someone that hates the cold and wants to get away with it? East Coast is probably not going to be the right place for you, as they get very cold winters. Do you want to be somewhere by the mountains? Maybe you might want to look somewhere like Colorado or even California. So something like the climate might be a very important factor for you to consider. Another factor is the access to transportation options. If you go to a smaller university, there might not be a lot of public transport, or maybe you're in a city where there actually is a lot of public transport. Maybe you live on campus or outside of campus. Is having transportation something that's important to you? Another thing to look at are the centers of excellence in your field. So for example, political science, you might want to look at Washington, D.C. Or if you're interested in studying finance, maybe New York is the place to go. And another factor is extracurricular opportunities. What is there to do after class or after your studies? You're going to be at the university for 4+ years. What other opportunities are there outside of the classroom? And the last factor to consider are the finances. So I will talk more in depth about funding later in this webinar, but if funding is important to you, then this needs to be part of your choosing process right from the beginning. So a lot of times funding, especially funding from university, is awarded and applied alongside the application process. So you don't want to start thinking about it after you've applied and been accepted, because at that point it might already be too late, and we wouldn't want for you to be disappointed later down the line. So we always say follow the money. And so if you need funding to pursue postgraduate study in the US, be sure that you look for those opportunities from the start. Okay, so now that you know what factors are important to you, how do you narrow down your options? There are many different factors to consider from your factor list. On our website, we have a page on choosing a university, which actually includes a link to very helpful search engines. For example, we have the Peterson's search engine and gradschool.com as well. You could also contact previous professors to see whether they have any advice or opinions on schools that could be a good fit for you. Or maybe you have professionals or colleagues in your field, or they could give you information on that, or that have experience in the schools in your discipline that you're thinking of applying to. So it's important that you think through the work of scholars you have previously read. Maybe there is someone you have identified as doing the kind of research you would like to do. Maybe you want to find out where are they teaching, or what are their colleagues working on, at what university are they at. And you want to narrow down your choice of universities to about 10 or so to actually research more in depth and get more information about them. Okay, so I mentioned Peterson's tool guide where you could narrow down your options. So this is one search engine that's really helpful to decide and kind of rank what factors are important to you in choosing a university. So for example, I will use this toolkit to look for graduate level schools and programs in a particular field. And in this case, I chose programs in anthropology. So if I click search, the search engine pulls up the results of different universities with departments or programs in anthropology. And you could see on the left sidebar, you could select a variety of different factors, such as location, tuition fees, school size, and other bits to narrow down the list even further. So once you narrow your choice to about 10 universities of interest, make sure you research them further on each university's website and reach out to them directly. Now, the goal is to select about 3 to 6 institutions where you will actually submit an application. Now, on the university websites, you could actually find more information on the faculty members that they have. Some even list CVs of their faculty. They might list their research interests and the list of their publications as well. University websites can provide contact information for specific professors to reach out to, and you could find out if they're still working on something that interests you. We recommend that you also reach out to current grad students. They can give you valuable insight into their experience as a graduate student at a particular university. And a lot of universities on their website, you will actually see contact details to like postgraduate students that you could talk to, or current students that are there that you could talk to as well. So you could ask them what kind of projects they are working on, you know, what their relationship between the professors and graduate students is like, if they are close with their supervisor, you know, what the campus culture is like at their university, or even more questions, more broad questions about the local area, what it's like, maybe how to find a good apartment, what the cost of living is actually like, things like that. Usually you could reach out to the departments, and they will be able to put you in touch by email with a current student. And this might be good to determine what it's like to study there, actually get the first-hand experience from a current student as well. Okay, so funding your studies. Funding is actually one of the top things we get asked about. And there's a big funding misconception that the US is always more expensive. On paper, that's true. However, the good news is that there is a significant amount of funding available on the postgraduate level for international students. And particularly if you are willing to be flexible and kind of go into this process with an open mind. Okay, so where is this money that I'm talking about? There are 4 types of funding for studying in the US. So the first one is personal or family funds. So there's a big culture in the US of actually saving and paying for university in a way that we don't actually have here in the UK, because we have the loan-based system. So there is an expectation that you will have to make some kind of contribution to your studies in the US, even on the postgraduate level. Another source of funding are the US universities themselves. And these are the best resource for funding. There are 2 common types of university-based funding. The first one is fellowships, which are outright grants to allow recipients to focus solely on their own work. And the second type is assistantships. And these are offered in return for services provided to the department. So that could be either teaching, research, lab supervision, or working in a campus office in exchange for fees waived, health insurance, and sometimes even a stipend that you would get. Now, assistantships are renewable year to year if the student maintains specific academic standards. So different departments and universities will set those standards for their students. And terms of assistantships will actually vary dramatically between universities and even between departments, as this will depend on the available grants that departments and universities have, and even the field and the department need. So it's always important to ask the department or the program about this kind of funding when you're choosing where to apply. There's generally more funding available for PhDs and students in the research-focused masters than for professional degree students. Now, this will also vary by subject area. So, for example, the sciences tend to receive more funding than programs in the humanities, because usually they tend to receive more funding. We recommend that you actually check with multiple offices about funding opportunities. So check with the department and check with the graduate school if it's applicable. And also we recommend that you check with the financial aid office as well, because you might be able to dip into different types of funding from each department or office. Another source of funding is external funding bodies. And these are niche scholarships, and these usually come from institutions that are separate to the universities. So different companies, charities, or foundations. So one example is the US-UK Fulbright Commission, where we actually have a Fulbright scholarship for postgraduate studies that you could apply to. And the last source of funding is loans. Now, most US lenders will require a US citizen to co-sign on the loan. And therefore, most UK citizens take out private loans from a UK bank. However, we would highly encourage you to examine the terms and interest rates closely, as usually you would have to start paying off before you even finish your degree. If you are an American or a dual US-UK citizen, you could take out a loan from a US lender and also apply for US federal loans through FAFSA. we actually recommend that university and external funding are the first source of funding for you, since they don't actually have to be paid back. Okay, so we actually advise that you consider a funding strategy to try and lower costs and manage your expenses during your postgraduate studies. So you might think of 3 different approaches as you do this. The first one is that you could reduce the cost of living. So rural versus urban. Just like here in the UK, regional costs will vary in the US. So London will always be more expensive than somewhere like Lancaster. The same thing goes for the US. Living in New York is going to be way more expensive than living somewhere like Michigan or Ohio. So the first way to reduce the cost is actually to look at universities in less expensive states. The second strategy is to look to lower the actual tuition costs. So as I mentioned at the start, US universities are allowed to set their own costs for their programs. It's not governed by the government or any governing body. Public universities, so state-funded universities, generally have a lower cost of tuition than private universities. Now, keep in mind that private universities might actually have more funding available, and funding will also vary by department within each university. So it's important that you kind of do that research and find out which university either has lower costs, or perhaps which university can offer you more funding. And the third strategy is to look for university funding. In addition to the ways we've talked about, you could also seek funding outside of your program. So for example, if you're looking to study architecture, but you have an interest in environmental architecture and maybe making buildings more green, you could look to seek funding from 2 different departments. Now, caution that you might not necessarily be able to use all of these 3 strategies in one go, but you might find that universities with low-end tuition have fewer funding opportunities, as I mentioned. So beware of the different factors at play when you do that research. And also make sure you do reach out to different departments that you might be able to gain the funding from as well. So an example of this is looking at Boston's university cost of attendance within the Department of Education and Human Development. It's over $85,000 with tuition, room and board, and other fees. Now, if I compared that to a master's at the University of Massachusetts in Boston as well, the tuition and off-campus finances would actually be $40,000 less. So this is the same city, okay? Both universities are in Boston, but they have a great variance in tuition and fees, which automatically could save you about $40,000. So this is what I mean when I say be open-minded. Sometimes universities that are close to each other will also have links and relationships with each other. And you might be able to take classes at Boston University while studying at University of Massachusetts. So that's also something to look at, especially if you're set on specific cities. You know, bigger cities will actually have more than one university there, and they might offer the same program that you're interested in, but one university might cost a lot less and have some funding available as well. So once again, it's important to do that initial research before you apply. Okay, so now I'd like to take a look at a few examples how to identify these different funding opportunities. So for university funding, the best resource is actually the university website. So it's important that you look at the department the graduate school, and the financial aid pages. Make sure you check out all three, because they might not have all funding opportunities that are advertised centrally. They might have specific opportunities for a specific department or for a specific graduate school, or it might just be on their financial aid page. So check out all three. Have a look at what they say. Do they have much funding available? So universities generally try to give you an accurate but a conservative measure of how much funding they offer. Now, if this information isn't available online on their website, it might suggest that they actually can't offer a lot of financial support. But it's always worth getting in touch with the department administrator or the director to inquire if they do have funding available. Think about whether you will be competitive for funding at a particular institution. So we recommend that you ask current students how competitive the funding really is. And what does their assistantship involve? Is there a good work-life balance? Try to get the inside scoop from current students. You might want to ask how many assistantships are there available, and if they are full or partial. So if possible, find out what basis they actually award the assistantships on. And it's important that you find out if admissions exam scores are factored into this, or are the assistantships based more on the basis of your other academics or prior experience. Make sure you find out if there are any other extra requirements you need to fulfill to be considered for an assistantship. Some universities might automatically consider you, but in some cases, you might have to submit an additional essay or even a resume to apply for an assistantship. And I'm going to show you an example of what you could look out for on universities' websites. So this is the website of the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Now, North Carolina, Chapel Hill is a top public research university. And I have highlighted some key points in their section about fellowships and assistantships and how to actually identify when a university has funding available. So as you can see, most universities who are generous with their funding will make it very obvious on their website that they have funding available. So in the Department of Political Science, they actually note that most students in their department are supported by fellowships and assistantships. And it also explains that duties typically range from 10 to 15 hours a week, and it lists the duties that you could expect to do. It also mentions eligibility for a variety of different fellowships, and it also notes that Chapel Hill has a lower cost of living. So you could see that 2 points of the funding strategy exist here. So both university funding that's available to you, and it has a lower cost of living. Okay, so resources for exploring external funding scholarships. We have links to online scholarship searches. They're listed on our website's postgraduate guide, and these can help narrow down the thousands of scholarships that are available based on country of origin, different fields, different factors, and it will allow you to find out more information about the eligibility as well. You also want to refer to the funding body's website if you find a specific scholarship for information about the application process and what deadlines they have. So on the next page, I'm going to show you some different non-university scholarships that are available and the funding that they have. So you could see that there's quite a few of them, including the Fulbright Commission. BUNAC offer a fully funded postgraduate scholarship as well. There's the Kennedy Memorial Trust, Frank Knox Fellowship. All these that are listed on here actually offer many many scholarships for postgraduate students, and these are all non-university scholarships as well. So as I mentioned, the Fulbright Award is an example of a scholarship from an external funding body. And funding is available for UK students to study and conduct research in the US and vice versa at a postgraduate level. Now on here it says deadline May 2023 for enrollment in 2024-25. The next Fulbright Award will open in February of 2024, and the deadline will be May 2024, and that will be for enrollment 2025-2026. So the number of awards actually fluctuates each year for the Fulbright scholarships, and these are for first year only. There are other partner awards that are fully funded. If you check out our website, it will have more information and more details as well. We also offered the IIE placement model, and this will provide more generous funding and support with finding the right university for you. So all the information is available on our website for the full. It's an audio issue. Harvey, hopefully the audio has been recorded, and I will send the link to the webinar later this week. If not, I will have a look, and I might send a webinar that I did a few months ago with the same information. Okay, I'm gonna wait a couple more seconds to see if there are any questions. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions. If you do think of any questions that you might have, please feel free to email us either at the program's email or advising email, and one of our advisors will be able to help you out and answer any of your questions. And as I mentioned before, we do have information on our website with all the sections that I went through in the webinar. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. I hope you have a very good evening. Thank you. Bye.